If you have your plants in the house for winter and you don't use growing lights and you don't have a special grow room, this is probably what your plants will look like after 6 months in the windowsill. Even though you can keep plants inside, bringing them outside will really help them. Hey, welcome. This is Jelle from Growing Bonsai, and it is early spring, time to get the plants from inside into the garden. Some branches are weak. I'll repot this, give it a nicer pot, add some fertilizer, and let's see how it develops over the season. The mini jade, it will look okay. This one doesn't get a lot of water over winter, it just stands in the windowsill and I wait for spring to come. The Brazilian Raintree. This plant really doesn't like me at the moment. It has dropped most of its leaves over winter and a few little branches, and there's just a few branches that have leaves. But the buds are swelling, it starts to grow. Now this is a very interesting plant that you hardly ever see for bonsai. This is family of the tomato and of the potato. It's a solanum. You can see by the little flowers, very recognizable flowers. It makes orange little berries and it's usually served as a decorative plant for in the house, in the store. If you look at the pot, there's a lot of calcium. That's the result of watering with tap water. It hasn't taken up any fertilizer because I haven't given it any and the soil is bad. This is the new pot. It was made by a friend of mine who lives close by, with nice maple leaves potted in it, with nice maple leaves pressed into the clay. Really nice decorative pot. This one was not, I think, wired in, so I should be able to just squeeze it out. Chopsticks, useful for everything. Look at how dry that is. I have been watering very poorly as it was inside. But we're going to fix that in a minute. This plant is getting a better life this season. So it is very important to realize that in your house it is very dark. So if I would put this straight away in the full sun, tomorrow this would be crisp. There would be not a single living leaf left. So after trimming it back, putting it in the pot, watering it well, I'm just going to put it in a dappled shade, maybe an hour or two of sun in the early morning, out of the wind because it's not used to wind, and after a week or two I'll move it into a full sun position, because by that time it has been recovering, it has been getting more UV, and it should be able to deal with it. So as this is short in nutrients, I'll add a bit of fertilizer straight away in the pot, so it gets nutrients straight away after repotting. This is not my normal practice, but in this case I thought it was beneficial. I don't want sprouts here, removing a little bit of this old stuff in between. This really is about getting it back to a growing condition for the rest of the year. There we go. Going to plant it a little bit deeper so that this calcium dissolves over the year. Plant it so that the cascading branch hangs over a corner. The weight, of course, of the plant is on this side, so any attachment wires need to go here. I don't have any lower roots that I can attach to yet. This really is a very young plant grown from a seed 3 years ago. Fold it around, over, and as per usual, tighten it into the pot. Then add substrate, fill it up, and water well. And this is ready to go into the garden. So this rain tree was grown from seed. It's been in this pot I think 2 years now. It's not been doing all that well, which is also why I have not been taking care of it all that well. Let's try to do that a little bit better, because I know there's a lot of people who like rain trees, and maybe I should get it to health and pass it on to somebody who needs a rain tree. I've got a few of them, and this is one of my lesser rain trees. What you see, there's no roots in the top of the pot. I'll get it out. Slowly detaching the root ball from the pot. There we go. Let's have a look. This is quite muddy and wet, you see? So there might be something with stagnant water being the reason why this doesn't grow all that well. Doesn't seem to be big of a problem. Let's shake this out. Yeah, it's quite wet. But the roots are actually quite healthy. I could trim these back substantially and pot it back up. Put it in a nice warm sheltered position. Not too much sun initially. As the buds are breaking, this is a good time to do this. It needs a bit of warmth, a little bit of light, and I think it will bounce back very quickly. That's about it. Ready to go back into a pot. The third sad plant is actually not all that sad. That's this mini jade. And this year I would like to grow it out a little bit, so it's going to go into a bigger pot. This is really overpotting it, so I have to be careful with watering. But let's see. Let's take this out of the container, get it potted up into this one, and see how it does over the year. And with that, the jade is ready for the season. The Raintree, the jade and the solanum. Let's put those in dappled shade and I'll give you an update in a second on how they're doing over the season. We just had the longest day. They're growing quite well. Few things to notice. This one has lost a few branches. Here this one was too weak, which is not a disaster. Here at the bottom there's also one which died off, which I don't really like, because for a cascade you just need the lower branches. To correct for this, this is quite weak because it is a cascading branch. I'm going to prune the top quite heavily, which is a shame because it is in full flower. It has a few aphids, so I might spray that later today. But besides that, it's recovered well from the repot. The jade, of course, growing really well. And this is interesting. Look at that. All these weeds occupying the Raintree pot. Let's get those out as well. All in all, Midsummer, they're all doing quite well. All recovered from their time inside. Now the rest of the summer, I hope that they'll really start pushing growth. This of course is not real fertilize, it's just something that the birds dropped. Well, you know what I mean, not what the birds dropped. So the first thing to do is, of course, here at the top remove all this long growth, because this really is competing with the cascading branch. This you could of course use for cuttings, but I'm not going to, because I don't need any more indoor trees. Weakening this as short as possible, and it will recover quite quickly now that summer has arrived. At the same time I'm removing part of the flowers, which is a shame. I don't get the berries, but on the other hand, this is about development pruning. This is not about looking pretty over winter yet. So this is all gone now. What you notice here, also an inner branch has died off. And here another one. So somehow this winter I've not been nice enough to this plant. It needs to get more light next winter. This is all recovered. Now this is still quite strong. Remove a little bit of the new growth. This comes from the lower branch here, but very early start. I'll leave one berry on and prune the rest. There we go. This is all top growth, but I actually want this lower branch also to grow. Or I could just accept that this isn't going to grow. And in fall I'll wire this one all the way down. I think that's what I'll do. So that's pretty much it for Midsummer. It's turning out to be a nice little cascade, but it needs a bit more growth and a bit more health. So, middle of July. This one is turning nice and green, has lots and lots of fruits. Had to stake the jade because it is just pushing with growth. And, oh, be careful there. The Raintree, growing quite nicely. Seems to be doing much better in this pot than it was in the previous pot. Well pleased. It's cold and wet outside, so I've put the Raintree in the greenhouse and look how it is pushing now. It seems to be happy. Right. Fertilizer and water have done their work and the tree is starting to look a lot better. Of course, there are some weak leaves that are now coming off. And there is this branch. This branch is not really growing much. And in fact, this has gone mad. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, okay, this branch down below is just not doing all that well. Let's remove that. There we go. Now I can wire this one down. Maybe I can bring this one here in. And then I have a nice full cascade again. The top, of course, I need to prune back because it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And I don't want the top to take over, right? And do you see all these nice little flowers? This is really turning out to a nice recovery. And soon it can go back inside and deteriorate again over winter. Time for a little bit more fertilizer, water, sun. Doing quite well. Look at those fruits. Well, it's the last weekend of July and I would say hypothesis confirmed. Look at this. This is just exploded with health and growth. Oh, don't drop the substrate. This is going to be so cool. However, I'm going to wire it out now, so it might actually slow down a little bit for the rest of the season. Where you look at that, the nice red fruits on here, you can still see a few of the leaves and they still have a few deficiencies, but that's only the old leaves. The new leaves are nice dark green, but how great are these fruits on there. Can't wait for this tree to grow out even bigger and be full of red berries at the end of summer. Talking about the end of summer, it is not the end of summer yet. We are at the end of August, but let me grab the other two plants. How great is this jade? Growing bananas, look at that. Cool. And what was the third one? I think it was a Raintree. And not just any Raintree, this Raintree. It has done remarkably well. I've wired it out. I have not really pruned it. I just removed one branch in the back and it has been pushing really well. Big bonus by repotting it. It is now doing much better. In fact, the bark is starting to peel, which is a sign of a very healthy trunk. So, end of August. I would say they're doing really nicely. So over winter I am keeping these indoors and I keep them dry. I water them maybe 2-3 times over the whole of winter and only the outside of the root ball, so as not to get any rot in these plants, because cold weather, little light and wet feet, that's something that doesn't work for these. So this is a bit of a sad moment of the year. We are in early October and it is time to look at the plants and bring them inside. And that is also the time that I look at the plants that I brought outside early in spring. And this has developed quite well. You can see there's still a few of these leaves that have yellow spots, but the rest of the plant is nice dark green. The birds have been feeding on the red fruits and I'm only left with a few green fruits, a few flowers, but this is ready to go inside. As a preparation to go inside, I will spray this once with my soap and alcohol mixture a week or so before I leave. And then I'll spray it once again the day that I move it inside, hopefully having killed off most of the parasites on this plant, so it will come through winter better. After that I'll move this inside in a windowsill and I don't do anything special. You know what my plants look like because at the beginning of the video you saw what this looked like in spring. Now, the jade, what can I say? This has exploded, right? Be on the watch out on my channel. I have a full video on just this jade, on how it is grown out over the summer. But it is needless to say, this has done really well outside. And last but not least, look at this Raintree. Look at how it has developed. It needed a repot in spring. I've done the repot, and originally this was my front. Now I have a massive sacrifice branch here which I'm going to clip off, but not now. I'm going to do that in spring. For now it can just help feed the rest of the plant, provide some energy through the solar panels. This is now the front. It was wired and I've been sloppy. I've not removed all the wires properly, but you can see there's a few wire scars here on the trunk which will grow out with a Raintree. It might take a year or two, but after that they're gone, because this bark, it actually peels. Look at that. This is the first section that has peeled. This is normal in a Raintree. So later when it starts peeling here on the top, these scars will peel off. You see there's a few weaker leaves here. That's completely normal, and what is going to happen is once I bring this inside, the change in dry air, lesser light, probably the watering will be a little bit different, will make this tree respond enormously, and there's a big risk of it dropping all its leaves. This is also fully normal, so don't be shocked if you bring a Raintree inside after summer that it drops its leaves. I'm going to trim back these a little bit before they come in, because they just make a mess in the house and I don't have all that much space. But this has done really well. The change of pot has made a big difference. The tree is now on its way to develop as a nice bonsai. This of course is an ugly transition, and what I'm considering doing is in spring to cut this off completely and just continue with the tree that I have it now, and hopefully some buds will pop here on the lower trunk. If not, it is just going to be a much bigger tree. Bonsai is about the process, it is not about instant gratification. So for me it is normal to have a tree in development and having it in development for several years before it looks good. Everybody has their own way. I like growing from seed and cuttings. Then the result is you have project plants sitting around all the time. This was it for now. Make sure that you bring your tropicals outside in early spring and inside before the first frost. Roughly when daytime temperatures do not hit the 10 degrees Celsius, that would be about the 50 Fahrenheit, these should be going inside, because that's really suboptimal for tropical plants. But until then, just keep them outside. And of course, nighttime frost. Never ever nighttime frost for tropical trees. This was Jelle, growing bonsai. See you next time.